Bobby never knew what hit him.
A recent high school grad and his best friend get ready for a night out.
A party that started out small, but quickly grew out of control.
Initially, 20 people were supposed to show. Someone put it on social media, so over 100 kids showed up.
The homeowner grows concerned and shuts the party down, sending dozens of teens out into the street.
Once that fight broke out, all chaos started happening.
And in the chaos, a random act of violence shocks the nation. "18-year-old Bobby Tillman lives with his mother, grandmother, and sister in Douglasville, Georgia, a sleepy suburb of Atlanta.
Bobby, he was beautiful. And I mean his spirit. You know, I was a single mother. He really took the role of the man of the house, so to speak, where he was very protective, very loving, very selfless. But even from a young age, it was like Bobby's joy was concentrated. Nothing really made him upset. He was very goofy, he was silly, but he was also determined, confident. He trusted his decisions because he based them on being a good person. You know, I lived in Los Angeles. I lived in Westchester, which is by the airport, by LAX, so it's not a bad area. But Bobby took public transportation to and from high school. He went to Westchester High, and someone robbed him on the bus, a grown man. And you can't help the element that gets on public transportation. When we first moved here, my sister was here first. So when we started to learn the community, it was well taken care of, protected by the police, by the sheriffs, very friendly. Crime was low. It wasn't a lot of crime. We have slept many nights without locking our front door, just forgetting, and nothing happened. It's like, yeah, we're gonna move here.
This place, I found beautiful people here. People are really nice and open and friendly to me. Beautiful, just beautiful, caring people, not someone trying to go after something or to get something from you.
Bobby and his friend Emmanuel Rawls are invited to a small party at a friend's house.
Now, Bobby told me that his friend was having a get-together. She was celebrating because she received good grades and they may go, him and his friends. So I was like, okay, you know, she was still in high school. She was still at Chapel Hill.
We had recently graduated, man. We were just like looking for fun, just trying to figure out what was going on that night. One of our female friends had hit us up and she said that they were throwing a party that night and we should come. They wanted us to come. She personally told us to come.
Out of nowhere, an odd feeling creeps over Bobby.
We often have gut feelings that tell us when something's going to be a bad situation, and in this case, Bobby did have that feeling.
He made a comment to us, and he said he didn't want to go to the party. And we ended up convincing him, you know, as his friends, and just like, hey man, like, well, what else are we gonna do? And you know, all the girls are gonna be there, and the girls we were talking to at the time are gonna be there, and it's gonna be fun, like, let's all go. I feel guilty in a sense because I convinced him. I kind of peer pressured him into, you know, attending the party. He initially felt like he shouldn't be there. And we ended up going.
He had on a gray cardigan sweater, a blue button-down dress shirt, and he had on navy blue jeans and red Vans. So I said, well, Bobby, where does the red come in? And so that's when he showed me the hat and put it on. And I was like, okay, you look nice, you look nice. And we always shook hands like this. And I said, I love you and be safe. He was very trustworthy. So when he told me where he was going and what he was doing, I believed him.
It was just shocking how that was the last moment that we would be with him.
The two boys leave for a house party at 10 p.m. They head to a cul-de-sac on Independence Drive, one way in, one way out.
When the guys arrive, they're surprised to see a lot more people than they'd expect for a standard high school house party.
So when we first got there, it was super crowded. The streets were packed and filled with cars. We honestly weren't expecting that many people to be there at this house party. But when we first got there, man, like, it was a fun function. It was like any other, normal teenage party. Teens were dancing and music was playing. Everybody was having fun. That was short-lived.
News of the party is spreading quickly, and more kids show up.
Initially, 20 people were supposed to show, 20 kids. Someone put it on social media, so over 100 kids showed up.
I just heard that he's informed his friends that he was going to leave the party. He was ready to go.
Bobby had school Monday. He was like, I want to go home. Plus, Bobby knew his curfew was 2 a.m. on the weekend because he was 18. And during the week, it was midnight because we had to work and he had to be respectful of that.
I don't know what gave him the slightest change of mind. I don't know what gut feeling he had.
Two girls start arguing inside of the home over a boy. So the parents told everyone to leave.
It's basically just putting like 50 to 100 teenagers in the middle of the street. Everybody wasn't really ready to leave. It was still early that night.
So they all left, but the home was situated in a cul-de-sac. But the car was kind of blocked in because of all the kids trying to get home.
There are literally dozens of kids show up to this party on this cul-de-sac. You can imagine they're all pinned into this little narrow bulb of a street. They start mingling, and there is no way to get out without jamming through the narrow exit. And so there's going to be a lot of tension in that party.
Outside, the street is packed, and for these kids, the night is still young.
In the midst of that moment, we all got out together, and we ended up just kind of waiting and chilling on the hood of the car that we drove in that night. That is when one thing just kind of led to another. I remember a group of girls started to fight. And once that fight broke out, is when all chaos just started happening. The fight kind of happened like almost right in front of us. Like it was on the other side of the street, but like we were pretty much right there. And nobody was really trying to break it up. In the midst of that fight, I remember like we all kind of split up.
Bobby is left alone as more fighting breaks out.
Girl whose party it was ran outside trying to get them to stop beating Bobby.
Police have already been called to the scene.
It took the police a while to get there, but it was because when the parents called, they never said that it was an attack going on. They just said, can you come and get the kids out of the street? So in their mind, it wasn't like a code red.
And as soon as those blue lights rolled down the street, I remember like everybody just scattering, like roaches.
I think the gentleman that they sent, or the sheriff, he was like 23. It was his first really big incident. So on the dash cam, we could hear the girl screaming, help my friend, help my friend. He's hurt. And then the officer gets out the car and he screams, "Everyone get the F on the ground." And he has his gun out. Well, one of the girls that invited him over was there and she was screaming. We could hear her screaming.
The cops were there. There was so many of them. I just remember seeing flashlights and blue lights and yelling and get on the ground. And I remember the EMTs, once they broke out the defib, I knew it was serious.
Paramedics are called to the site and start to work on Bobby. But it's already too late. He's too far gone.
I didn't even know what to think. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I grabbed his shoe. His shoe fell off. So I picked his shoe up. And I held it so tight.
When a crime occurs, when you have a containment point, you're more likely to obtain more witnesses. You've got a cul-de-sac with a narrow entry. The police arrive and they are able to contain a large number of those youth in that area. Even though it's not pleasant to go and try to interfere in a mess like that and contain it, in one way there is an advantage that you've got everybody sort of pinned in that cul-de-sac. If that had been a party in an open field or in a big backyard with fences, they'd have been jumping and running and going all over the place. You'd have lost your witnesses, you'd have lost your suspects, you'd have lost everything out the door.
I just remember yelling out Bobby's name as I sat there on the curb. Officers had guns in my face, flashlights. I just remember praying.
"18-year-old Bobby Tillman is going to a small get-together to celebrate a friend's good grades. But when the party gets shut down, dozens of worked-up teens are sent out into the street.
I didn't even know what to think. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I just remember yelling out Bobby's name as I sat there on the curb.
Police arrive on the scene, but it's too late to save Bobby's life. Bobby Tillman is a recent high school graduate. He finishes school in Douglasville, Georgia, after his family moves from Los Angeles.
Bobby's aunt lives in Georgia, and so the family moves to Douglasville to be closer to her.
You know, I was a single mother, and so it was Bobby, my daughter Fashionay, and myself. And Bobby was just very courageous at a young age. He really took the role of the man of the house, so to speak.
What I really remember is just like, you know, him being silly and just like us being best friends and getting closer. Our only year being in school together, I realized like a lot of people thought he's like funny like I did.
At first, Bobby sticks out like a sore thumb.
He was really different because he's from California. You know, we grew up in Georgia. So he's wearing Vans and skinny jeans, and we didn't know anything about that. So, you know, he was the talk of the town. Nobody really understood him. You know, he was his own individual, his own person. So he kind of stood out. So when I was in class, we kind of made eye contact. And then one day he ended up talking to me, and we talked every day after that.
We had a Spanish class together. He was always talking to me. So I'm like, dude, I'm trying to learn Spanish. You have to let me learn. But he was just always so full of light, joyous, always smiling.
After high school, Bobby enrolls in a 2-year college.
He wanted to own his own business. He wanted to be an entrepreneur. He was very determined. So he was on that pathway to become a sports agent.
When Bobby turns 18, it's a big day, but he doesn't want it to just be about him.
Him and Emmanuel walk in the house, and Bobby has 12 long-stem red roses for me. And he said, "Mom, this is just for being my mother." You know, on his birthday, he gave that to me. And I still have those roses to this day in a shadow box on the wall in my bedroom.
Bobby takes his role as man of the house very seriously.
On September 29th of that year, I had major surgery. So I was on short-term disability, but Bobby literally stayed home. He went and got my prescriptions. He moved my bed so that it was closer to the heater. He would go up and down the stairs to get my food.
After going to see a church play with his family, Bobby is invited to a small house party.
I mean, he was really there for me, to where that night that he went to the get-together, I was like, yeah, go on and enjoy yourself. You've been in this house with me. You've been helping me. Go and have fun. You know, he was 18 years old. He deserved to do that. So he thought, yes, that he was going and they were just going to have fun and he was coming home.
Across town, a different young man is taking care of his mother. Trayson Franklin went to a different school than Bobby, but has just started playing college football. He has come home for the weekend to take care of his mother, Sonia Barber.
Emmanuel Boykins hears about this party on the cul-de-sac, contacts his buddy, Trayson, who isn't invited to the party, and they decide to meet at 10 p.m. and crash the party regardless. Bobby is at the party already when Trayson and Emmanuel arrive.
And they aren't the only ones with the idea of crashing a party.
Not long after, Horace and Quantes arrive at the same party in the cul-de-sac. None of these people have been invited to this party.
Coleman and Mallory run in a different crowd from Bobby. Coleman's on probation for marijuana possession, and Mallory's known for getting into trouble, though folks say it's never been anything too serious.
When the party grows out of control, the parents shut it down.
So I'm guessing what happened was he was laying against his car, waiting for his friends because he was ready to go.
Out on the street, another fight breaks out.
It was said in the news that the boy that initiated or first hit Bobby broke up a fight between two girls. And one of the girls hit him. So he didn't want to hit the girl. So the next boy that passed by, he would hit, which was supposed to be Bobby.
A guy came out, hit him upside the head. He fell to the ground. They immediately started jumping him and beating him.
Across the street, a neighbor looks on.
At this time, Bobby was just laying on the ground, and he went and started stomping him more, so hard and violently that his feet were lifted off the ground. The girl in court that was standing there told us that Bobby, after they finished attacking him, that he jumped up and he started trying to speak.
As Bobby collapses back on the ground, police arrive on the scene.
In the midst of all of this chaos, girls fighting, guys fighting, the cops were already on their way. None of us were really aware of the situation. And as I ran towards the car that night, I remember seeing Bobby on the ground at the end of the car. I remember one of the girls that threw the party that was there. She was holding him. I couldn't hear what she was saying to him, but I could hear Bobby kind of mumbling, almost. She was crying. She was yelling his name, Bobby, Bobby. It all just happened so fast, man.
He did have a small pulse, so she began CPR until the ambulance came. And we can see in court the video of them pumping on Bobby's chest to try to get his heart pumping again, because they just didn't understand what was wrong.
EMTs perform CPR until Bobby's loaded into the ambulance, but he remains unresponsive.
As Bobby is taken to the hospital, the police start asking questions.
Bobby was attacked maybe 11:30, a quarter to 12. But by the time the police came and they brought the ambulance and they got everyone and got their cell phones, it was maybe 1 a.m.
They pointed them out right there on the spot. 2 of them I recognized. They were right next to us.
Now the police have to interview as many people as possible, and they have to maintain control of these people till they get the witness statements. Once they leave, there's no recovering them. They don't know who they are. They don't even know who each other are at this party in all probability. So they round up 57 teens and start the arduous process of recording witness statements to try to find out what happened to Bobby.
And because they were the ages that they wanted to make them as comfortable as possible. So that's why instead of having them sit outside, and it was November, it was cold, we'll put them on the bus and bring them to the sheriff's station where it's warmer and they'll be more comfortable, when we question them. But when the suspects were questioned, they didn't know they were suspects. They thought they were being questioned as witnesses. And so they asked each of them, "Did you see Tillman in the house?" They were like, "Yeah, we did." "Well, what was he doing?" Two said, "Oh, he was just dancing and having fun."
I don't know what happened in between the time from we were having fun to the time the fight broke out.
They told me, they said, "Ma'am, we interviewed over 60 kids. They all said that Bobby did nothing to warrant this attack."
Police believe they have all the perpetrators. But someone escapes into the night. When a high school house party is shut down, violence erupts. Police arrive on the scene, and witnesses immediately identify Bobby Tillman's attackers.
And they brought a bus, and they loaded everybody on that bus.
57 teens are loaded on buses, but someone has evaded the police.
I was the only kid that night that didn't get on that school bus. Everybody else had to get on that school bus and ride to the precinct together until they figured out what happened to Bobby. And I spoke up. I told the officers I know him. That's my brother. That's my best friend. But once I said that, the officer, I don't remember his name, and he had me walk with him. Before I got to his car, they had Bobby in the back of the ambulance already trying to rush him to the hospital. I stood on the back of the ambulance. Just wanted to see him one last time. I didn't know how severe his conditions were. I didn't know if he was still alive or not at that point. I remember when I was in the squad car, still had his shoe. I just remember gripping that shoe the entire night. I just kept asking him, "Hey man, is Bobby gonna be all right? Is Bobby all right? Bobby's all right, right?" And I just remember him telling me, soft, real soft, "Yeah man, Bobby didn't make it." It wasn't until I got to the precinct, they sat me down in the room and, asked me a few questions. It wasn't until then they took it from me. Told me this is evidence. I said, "Nah, man, I gotta keep this."
It doesn't take long for news of the attack to spread, and Bobby's little sister gets a call that she will never forget.
He asked to speak to my mom, and I was like, "Oh, she's asleep." He was just like, "Well, Bobby was basically jumped at a party, and he was in critical condition."
Fashionée rushes to her mother's bedroom.
The family, going through horrible emotions, have very little information. They have secondhand news. There is no idea what happened. Nobody is telling them anything much because I firmly believe no one knows exactly what happened at this point in time. It's a mystery.
I don't even know if someone called the ambulance for Bobby, if he was just laying in the street. I wasn't sure what happened to him and where he was at that moment.
Bobby's family immediately takes action. His grandmother immediately heads to the hospital while his mother and sister drive around looking for him.
As Bobby's mother and sister scour the streets, she gets the call that every parent dreads.
So then the sheriffs called me and they said, ma'am, we need you to go back home. We have information about your son, so we need you to go home. I'm standing there with my daughter, she's next to me. We let them in and they asked us to sit down. And I was like, no, where's my son? We have something to tell you. Is Bobby alive? No, ma'am, he's not. And I said, well, was he shot? Was he stabbed or something? Or was he, because in my mind, if Bobby is not alive, then it's something that accidentally killed him because he wouldn't do anything to anybody. And they said he was beat to death. And I said, what? I couldn't believe it.
Since there were dozens of people at that party, news of the attack on Bobby reaches far more people than just his family.
I was sleeping, and about 3 o'clock, I kept hearing my phone going off. I kept getting calls, I kept getting text messages. So I woke up, and I'm just like, what? What happened? And they were like, well, he was at a party, and he got jumped at this party, and now he's dead.
At the same time, Trayson Franklin quietly sneaks home, unaware of Bobby's death.
Trayson is at home with his mother, and she asks him if he was at this party where there was the murder, because she sees it on social media and wants to know if he was there. He denies it at first, but through questioning, and he's acting kind of strange, he eventually admits to her that he was at the party. And she in turn thinks that he should be turned over to the police to give a statement.
Meanwhile, the 3 other boys accused of attacking Bobby take turns being interrogated.
They thought they were being questioned as witnesses. And so they asked each of them, did you see Tillman in the house? They were like, yeah, we did. Well, what was he doing? One said, I think he was texting. Another one said, I think he was on the phone, maybe he was texting or calling someone. The other 2 said he was minding his business. So these are the 4 that attacked him. And then after they gave their statement was when they were told they were suspects.
All investigations have their quirks, but when you have 57 potential witnesses, you have 57 different stories. And you have to sit down as an investigating team. You just can't do this by yourself. There has to be multiple authors involved. Once you find an inconsistent story amongst 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these people there, that is the beginning of that investigation. Now you've got people who are at the very close core of this murder and aren't willing to cooperate with what they actually saw. So you've got versed stories. Now you've got something to target.
The boy that ran, the police called his mother and asked her if she could bring him down to the sheriff's station, just to be questioned as a witness because of what happened to Bobby. So he came down and they questioned him and he said, I don't know which one said what as far as he was minding his own business, he was doing this, but he was one of them that said Bobby didn't do anything.
Trayson sweats it out for 2 hours before cracking.
He said, yes, I was a part of it, but I only kneed him in the stomach and I only hit him in the head.
Soon after, the autopsy is completed.
Bobby has suffered severe blunt force trauma to his head and abdomen.
Bobby was kicked around like a soccer ball, that it was a vicious attack, that his whole left side was damaged. He could have died from his lung being damaged. His kidney was damaged, as well as his heart. So he was badly beaten.
The cause of death is revealed to be a lacerated lung. Bobby had been kicked so viciously that a broken rib pierced his heart.
The Saturday after Bobby was murdered, he is laid to rest.
Though his biological family couldn't be here today because they're back in Georgia also celebrating his life, we as his honorary family just wanted a chance to show our appreciation for him being in our lives.
Remember Bobby, because he wanted to do right.
Love you, Bobby!
His memorial becomes a rallying point for the community, and the nation pays attention.
At his funeral, it was over 700 some people. We were here just 2 years now from California. I know I didn't know those people, but his friends, and he just made so many friends.
The crime has rocked the community, and the unprovoked killing of an innocent teen makes national news.
The conversation quickly focuses on the moral character of the accused. A former teacher says that he's seen this coming for 10 years. He's been worried about the lack of empathy among the students.
But many in the community rally to defend the accused.
You know, people wanted to be on the side of the guys that actually did it. And they're like, well, they're good people, and, you know, they're good athletes, and they're this and they're that.
In the midst of this national debate, the grief becomes too much for Monique to bear.
If Bobby couldn't eat, I didn't want to eat. If Bobby couldn't drink, I didn't want to drink. If Bobby couldn't laugh, I didn't want to laugh.
Why would this happen to Bobby? But it did, and it was true. As I accepted it, I knew I had to be strong for my daughter because she was on the verge of really taking her life.
On the verge of a mental collapse, Bobby's mother is approached by the DA.
Proving criminal intent and that they are responsible for Bobby's death is not going to be easy, even with dozens of witnesses. The district attorney believes that the case will be easier to win with the death penalty off the table, so now it's left to Bobby's mother, Monique. She has the impossible decision of whether or not to proceed and ask for the death of 4 young men.
The trial's start date is just months away, but the clock is ticking. "18-year-old Bobby Tillman is beaten to death outside of a house party in November 2010.
4 teenage males are charged with Bobby's death.
The case garners international attention, and the trial is set to begin. The DA wants to offer the boys a plea deal that will take the death penalty off the table.
The district attorney makes the same offer to all 4 accused, but only Boykins accepts. In exchange for pleading guilty, he will not face the death penalty.
The one that took the plea deal received 30 years to life. So after 30 years, he is eligible for parole. So that's why we supported the plea deal. They explained to us that he did express remorse.
Emmanuel Boykins is sentenced in April 2012. Trayson Franklin's trial begins the following September. Trayson rejects the plea deal, and the DA seeks the death penalty.
It is day 2 of the capital murder trial of Trayson Franklin. Channel 2 is live outside the Douglas County Courthouse with the emotional testimony.
That trial was horrible because we were censored as a family. We couldn't cry. We couldn't make a sound in the courtroom because it could be prejudice towards the jury and it could result in a mistrial. Douglas County District Attorney's Office at the time was so supportive, very caring. They loved Bobby, and I appreciated that so much. And she said, before we start the trial, I want you to know what Bobby actually went through. During certain testimonies, they would pre-warn us like, look, we want you to leave during this testimony. I don't want you in here because of what's about to be said. And so that's what we did.
Bobby's family and friends take turns attending the trial, so Monique does not have to bear the burden alone.
Keisha was in court every day, so she will always have a special place in my heart.
There was times that, the DA would say, you guys probably don't want to be in here for this because they're going to show pictures of Bobby. And everybody was, leaving out of the courtroom. I had told Miss Monique that somebody has to stay in here for him. So I stayed.
As the trial gets underway, a full picture of that evening comes to light. Testimony reveals Bobby may have been targeted.
It was said in the news that the boy that initiated or first hit Bobby broke up a fight between two girls, and one of the girls hit him. So he didn't want to hit the girl, so the next boy that passed by, he would hit, which was supposed to be Bobby. But that's not true. They were watching Bobby from across the street. And then, when his friend walked away, they ran over. They said that one hit Bobby from the back of the head. Bobby never knew what hit him. And then the other three ran across the street and joined in, and they stomped him till his heart burst.
Barbara Steffens, a neighbor on Independence Drive who witnessed the attack, takes the stand.
She saw a teen lying on the street and another wind up and deliver a ferocious kick. They were under a streetlight, so she's positive of what she saw.
They also said that the boys were kicking Bobby around like a soccer ball, and that the one that faced the death penalty, he was stomping on Bobby so hard that Bobby's feet were lifting off the ground, and he never even met him.
The first officer to arrive on the scene also testifies.
I also learned that the sheriff that came, that he would testify that when he was protecting Bobby's body, the other kids were laughing and joking. I truly believe they didn't know the severity of Bobby's injuries, and that's why they were doing it, which doesn't make it right or excuse it. During the closing argument, the defendant, his attorney was trying to say, well, it's just a minute. So Brian pointed at the clock, and he said that we're going to start when it gets on to 12. We're going to count a minute, and we're going to say punch, stomp, kick, punch, stomp, kick. And he said it over and over and over. He stopped when it got at the 15-second mark, and he said, look at how many times I said that, and we're only at the 15-second mark. Now times it by 4, and then add 45 more seconds. That's what he went through.
Bobby's family asked Keisha to give the impact statement.
I just read my victim statement, letting them know that they had taken away one of my friends. They took away somebody's son, somebody's brother, grandson, a nephew. Letting them know that their actions, took somebody away from us. Could have just walked away.
Trayson's fate is in the jury's hands.
It takes the jury just an hour and 45 minutes to reach a verdict.
The jury finds Trayson guilty, but sentencing is not so straightforward.
During the punishment phase, because they were deadlocked, they couldn't decide. So when that happens, the judge takes over and he sentences. And so he had two choices, life with parole or life without the possibility of parole. But that's because they couldn't decide on the death penalty.
With the jury deadlocked, the sentencing decision falls on the judge. He strikes a compromise and gives them life without possibility of parole.
Trayson Franklin will spend the rest of his life in prison. The last attackers to be tried are Horace Coleman and Quantez Mallory.
So we went to 3 different court hearings, but 2 trials, because the last 2 were tried together. And they both said they were innocent, but they were found guilty. So all 3 of them received life without parole.
So, hearing the guilty verdicts and things of that, it was nice, that we could finally, he could rest. He was like, justice was served, but just hearing over and over and over again how this happened, nobody wants to,
The grief of losing her son has almost swallowed Monique whole.
To me, they're all initiators. They all initiated their own attack on Bobby. Just because he started it, they started their own as well. You know what I mean?
But I just don't feel like 3 of them ever admitted to killing him.
So, I mean, we went back and forth. Of course, us personally, we thought that they definitely deserved the death penalty. Of course, you murder someone who did absolutely nothing to you, you deserve, pretty much what you dished out. But in reality, the justice system works in its own ways.
In the Douglas County Courthouse, a meeting room is dedicated to Bobby's memory.
After Bobby's death, because my daughter really got involved in the community to help other kids and families, especially families that have lost children through that type of violence, being beat up or killed. She become like a spokesperson, and all I do is support.
We formed an organization. It's called BFAM, and it stands for Bobby Tillman's Family.
It's a Stop the Bullying movement, senseless violence amongst our youth. From, the shootings to, the whole 9 yards. So just, we like to reach out to those that feel bullied or, have gone through it.
When I thought about it, and I said, well, why would these 4 boys attack Bobby? They didn't even love themselves. How could I expect them to respect a person that they've known for 2 seconds when they didn't even love the person they're with every second of the day? So I created the Bobby Tillman Walk, Run of Love race. So I wanted, to say, we're gonna have a race of love where that's the focus. Love yourself and then love others. To me, we lost 5 lives that night, but 4 had a choice.
Bobby is gone, but his memory and legacy live on.
I had Bobby cremated, so he is in my room. At the time, because we were just here for 2 years, I didn't know if I was going to stay. And I said, wherever I go, my son's going. I'm not leaving him anywhere.